If you're a service provider, you know how tough it can be to juggle a client's project, communicating on that project, managing the project tasks, delegating tasks, and not losing your damn mind doing all the things. There's a lot of talk about finding the perfect client portal. Is it Notion? Is it Kitchen.co? Is it something else? Before we get to that, I'm Ashley, and I do the work behind the scenes to make your systems keep up with you, keep you sane, keep you paid, and keep your business running with or without you. In this video, I'm teaming up with a fellow systems geek, Fran of the Passions Collective, to walk through the things we love about using Notion and Kitchen.co as client portals and why we think you will too. Fran, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell the people who you are, where you're from, what you do, and all the things.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. I'm Fran. I am the founder of the Passions Collective. I'm a client experience architect, and I help build just client experiences and backend systems for other entrepreneurs. I work mostly in Dubsado, Honeybook, and Notion. I am currently based out of Nashville, but I actually was born and raised in upstate New York.
Nice. Fran is a fellow systems geek. Talked before on other videos about like Notion is just not my thing. I understand and recognize that it works well for some people, right? It just does not work well for me and my brain. So I said, let me tap in the expert. When it comes to client portals, like I think that a lot of people usually kind of lean towards like the pretty stuff, right? Like whatever's prettiest, I want that. But really, I want y'all to start thinking about like what's most functional, right? Like, yes, we want, you or your potential or future team to be able to manage things easily. To me, a couple must-haves in a client portal is like, the client always knowing or being able to access what's next easily, right? Hey, where can I just ask you questions? Where can I see, either the status of my project or my homework, right? That's kind of central place for visibility. Fran, I don't know if you have any like must-haves that you feel are like absolutely needed inside of a client portal.
Honestly, I agree with all of the ones that you said. Like, I think of client portals as just being a really central location for everything that's kind of going on in a project, and just eliminating the places that you have to keep track of everything, or the client has to keep track of everything. And yeah, I think the most important element of the client portal is that it's easy to navigate and that your clients can easily find the most important information. So if that's like the tasks that they need to be working on, or easily seeing like an overview of the project timeline, like I think the most important thing is that those are just easy to access and they're not really like buried behind pages and pages and pages.
Yeah, definitely. Fran and I both are going to hop into Notion and Kitchen. And we're going to just really kind of share, why we feel the two work really well for client portals. I think we both share the same sentiment that, there is no such thing as an all-in-one tool. So when it comes to client portals, we do integrate those portals with another tool, right? To manage our clients maybe on the front end, to get leads in the door or get proposals or contracts signed and invoices paid, right? And then the portal manages everything after someone's paid. So I want y'all to keep that in mind as you're watching this. Don't feel like, okay, they're going to tell me to just put my entire business inside of this portal. No, we're not telling you. No, we're not telling you that. These portals can be very powerful for how you manage your day-to-day business. So we're going to hop right in.
Okay, so this is my Notion client portal template. With Notion, one of the things that I appreciate the most about it is that it's extremely customizable, because everything that you do in Notion starts with a blank page. However, that can be equally as daunting as it is helpful, so it kind of depends on what your vibe is. But for my portal, I have the client tasks section as kind of this front and center on the page. This is really the first thing that they will come to when they're accessing the portal. And for me, that is the most important thing that I want clients to see. So when they're getting access to their portal, I want them to be able to just really quickly glance at the screen and see whether they need to be working on something or whether they're good to go. So the way that I have this set up is that there are a couple of different tabs here, and with the Notion template, you have the ability to kind of pre-populate tasks inside of here. So if you're somebody where the things that your clients are doing every single time you work with them on a specific type of service, or just in general, if the tasks that your clients are doing are the same across the board, you can have those added in here ahead of time. And then the only thing that you would need to do during a project is, maybe add specific due dates, link a specific deliverable that they need to review. So you can go ahead and kind of pre-populate this with whatever tasks you have. So we'll just add an example task here. This view is kind of optional for whether you want to keep this or get rid of it before you share the template with the client. So if you want them to be able to have a place to see everything, you can. Otherwise, you can just delete this before sharing it with them, and then they have these other 3 tabs to work with. So the way that their current tasks tab works is that it's not going to show anything that doesn't have a due date assigned to it. So what this view does is it's really just focused on anything they need to be doing currently at that point in time. So it allows you to have tasks that are populated for future, like future weeks, future days, however long your project timelines are. You can have those tasks added in here ahead of time, but they won't show up in this section until a due date is assigned, so that it's not like clogging things up here. So for this, if I go ahead and assign this to myself and then add a due date as Friday, now in the current tasks tab, this is showing up here. So that is because it's due and something that the client would need to be working on. The upcoming tasks view here, the way that this works is it groups tasks by the due date. One way that you can use this is really just having kind of like a long list of the tasks that will be coming up in the project and then assign due dates to them as you go. But if you're somebody who has pretty standard project timelines, then what you can do is actually add the due dates for all of these tasks ahead of time based off of your project timeline, and then they will show up here. They're grouped under the week that they're due. So if I add another task here and change the due date to next week, now we have another kind of column, so it's grouping the tasks for this week. So this is really helpful if you want clients to be able to see what's coming up on their schedule during a project and when their deadlines are for certain tasks or for getting feedback to you. And this is how I use this portion of the portal in my project, because my timelines, they don't really change very much during the project. So I go in here, I add their tasks ahead of time with all of their due dates, and then when something is actually ready for them to approve or provide feedback on, I assign it to them, and then it will show up in this section. So if I remove the assignee from these tasks, you'll see that it's going to go away. And the reason for that is I don't like to assign tasks to a client ahead of time in terms of the assignee feature in Notion, because it's going to notify them every single time you mention them in a page. And that's just going to be really overwhelming if they're starting a project with you and they're getting, a ton of emails of saying, Fran mentioned you in this page, Fran mentioned you in this page. So waiting until the task is actually something that they need to take action on to assign it to them is really helpful, because then they're getting notification at the correct time. But it still allows you to have these tasks in here ahead of time, pre-populated, whether you have due dates assigned to them or not, so that clients can get kind of an at-a-glance of what the project is going to look like and what their responsibilities are. And then to keep things just clean and not clutter up the current tasks tab, we also have completed tasks. So if something gets assigned to your client and then they mark it as complete, It goes away, moves out of the current tasks, and moves into the completed tasks so that everything is very clean and it's not taking up space that it doesn't need to be taking up. And then we have the project calendar section, which is another great way to just have an overview of what to expect. So you can really use this section in a couple of different ways. This could just be the different phases of your project. So for example, if you are a copywriter, maybe this is pre-project and then brand voice drafting and then website copy draft 1 and website copy draft 2. So it can be the different phases of your project, or it could also be like the different days of your project or the different weeks of your project if you're somebody who works on more condensed timelines. So this could be week 1, week 2, week 3, or it could be different phases. It's really up to what makes the most sense for you and your business. And with each of these, we can set the estimated dates ahead of time. So if you know, let's say this is like drafting brand voice, and maybe that's the first step in the project, and you know that their project is starting on the 18th and this is going to take you 2 weeks. You can assign those dates ahead of time, and then on the main page here, those are going to show up and they know, okay, for these 2 weeks of the project, we're going to be drafting the brand voice, and that's what's going to be going on. And then the other thing about these pages is that if you have any tasks that are assigned to your client that are in relation to this specific phase, you can add a task here, and this is going to say, like, you know, we can leave it as task template, but this would be a task specifically for this whatever phase or whatever week of the project it is, and this is going to show up in the tasks up here, but then it's also going to show up in this page. So that way, if you want your clients to be able to see what tasks they have in relation to a specific phase of the project, they can get this kind of zoomed in view as opposed to seeing like everything up here. So that is another feature of this section. And then the last thing that I really like about this is if you're somebody who has a consistent project timeline, maybe it's like one thing is happening each week or each phase takes a certain amount of time, what you can do is actually set these dates ahead of time in your kind of overall template. We start this the week after the last one ends, and that's like a week long, and then maybe this one is the following week. Then what we can do in Notion is use dependencies. So in this timeline view, we can essentially link one to the next one. A couple of options here, but I usually have this as shift and maintain time between items. So you turn that on, and then when you link these, if you change the date of one, it's going to automatically change the date of the rest. So if you have your project timeline set, then when you're going into Notion and creating a client portal for any of your projects, all you would need to do is change the initial date here. So let's say that this project is actually starting on June 15th instead of May 18th. So then we would adjust this first date to June 15th, and then that was a 2-week process. Okay, so when we updated that first date, now these upcoming weeks automatically adjust. So that's a really nice feature to have if you are somebody that has consistent project timelines and those stay the same for a certain service. Then when you're putting together this portal, it really cuts down on the manual work that you have to do to actually map out that timeline for your clients. This resources section is really kind of a build your own journey. It's just some blank pages that can be whatever you need them to be, whether that's, you know, if you are a web designer, maybe you have certain tutorials or resources that you want to link out about how to set up Google Analytics or how to do certain things on your domain or how to change things inside of Showit or Squarespace. So these could be resources around different topics that your clients might need help with after they've finished working with you, or it could be resources that you want them to refer to during a project. So with Notion, you have the option to do a lot of things. So this could be like a text-based resource if you're just having like written content here. It could be videos that are embedded onto this page. It could be like a PDF that's embedded onto the page. So there's a lot of options depending on the type of resource that you might be sharing with a client. And then we have this brain dump section here. And I really enjoy this because it just gives a central location for all of those random conversations that might happen throughout a project when a client's saying, hey, I thought of this thing and I wanted to share it with you. It provides a space for them to do that, and they would just add a new page here. So it's going to have a little template here with some instructions for them to know how to use it, and they can add a comment, or they can drag images or add links or whatever they might be wanting to share with you into this page, and then you have access to it. And there's also an automation that you can set up inside of Notion that would give you a notification when they add a brain dump item. So that way you're not just kind of needing to go in and check this every so often. You'll actually get notified when they're adding something so that you can go and take a look at it. And then it acts almost similarly to a task in the sense that we have different statuses, and these can be customized, but these really basic ones here just kind of let your client know at a glance, like, has Fran looked at this? Do I need to, maybe check in with her? So it just kind of cuts down on a lot of that back and forth that might happen via email during a project, and provides a central location for that. The last thing that I wanted to just mention in relation to the tasks inside of Notion is that because these are just an individual page in Notion, that gives you the flexibility for these to include whatever you need them to include. So whether you want to link to a Google Doc with something for them to review, or if you need to embed a Loom video, or if you need to just have like text inside of the page itself, you have the flexibility to do that. And then you have the comments feature, so you can go back and forth with the client. They can tag you, you can tag them, you can get notified about that, and have, again, just like that central location for having conversations during a project that don't require all of the email threads that can get lost or just are hard to keep track of. The last thing is just this sidebar over here, giving you space to embed a little welcome video. You can link out to anything that the client might need access to. So for example, like a client portal or a Google Drive folder, or any other links that they might need quick access to. Similar to Ashley's client experience guide, I am also big on just setting boundaries ahead of time and having that be really front and center. So there's also this communication section that you can adjust and share, like what your office hours are and how the client can get in touch with you, so that that's there and that's being communicated throughout the process.
So this is inside of my very own Project Hub or Kitchen portal. With Kitchen, it can be fully white labeled. I will make sure to link my, Kitchen in 10 minutes video that I walk through all of the individual features and what's possible inside of Kitchen. But for me, this is the exact template that is created when my clients sign, right? For me, the things that are most important, again, I want to be able to quickly and easily communicate. I want you to be able to see what you need to see when you need to see it, right? For my clients, once they sign inside of Dubsado, Zapier kicks in and immediately invites them into their project hub. The only thing that they are able to access immediately is the project chat. They are told in their initial welcome email, like, hey, jump in and send me a wave and blah, blah, blah. So for me and my assistant, Montana can jump in and, send a saved reply. Hey, I'm Montana, blah, blah, blah. Me and Ashley will be inside soon, whatever, right? We can send voice notes. We can, send GIFs, all of the things. But this just allows a single place for us to manage the client communication throughout the entire project, okay? So we don't have to hop in emails, maybe I'm out for a couple days and the client needs something, Montana can manage and see all of that communication here. The client doesn't have to wonder like, oh, do I go over here to access things or do I go over here to ask questions, right? Project chat, clear, simple, bam. This is where you go. Also within Kitchen, you can link out to external files, right? So again, in the other video, I do go through in detail just kind of some of the other Notion features. But one of the things that I really like most is being able to link out to external files. And so my intake form is a Google Doc. So they don't have to leave Kitchen. They click the tab, they come through here, They fill it out. We can, comment on the document if needed. Usually on our kickoff calls, I pull this up and kind of work through the document as well. But again, it's all here in a centralized place, easy, one reference place for the client to go to. For the client experience guide, this is actually a Dubsado form. So it is unique to them. Montana takes the time to kind of come in and update this for them after they book. And this is just a template placeholder, but she'll come in, swap out the link that's unique for them, to welcome them, their name, all of the things. But I want them to be able to always reference like who the team is, when I'm available, how we'll communicate, what our office hours are, right? I'm really big on just kind of setting boundaries early and often. And so this is my way of doing that by having that easily, here and readily available inside of Kitchen. For the scope of work, again, this is how my brain works for me. I like to just kind of break out all of the work that I'm doing for my clients, right? So if you are a copywriter, for example, when you kick off with the client, you know that you're going to need them to complete an intake form. Maybe you do interviews for past clients and you need a list of those client names. Maybe you need, maybe you have like a unique brand voice messaging guide document, right? You could have that inside of the template and create those as individual tasks, right? Homework item 1, homework item 2, and you can list those here individually, and these can be assigned to the client. You can set due dates for them. You and the client can communicate, right? But again, it's a central place. The client knows and sees what they need to see when they need to see it. The thing that I like about Kitchen is the ability to kind of show and hide only the things you want the client to see. So I mentioned, when a client signs, they only see the project chat, right? But later on in the project, I can decide that, hey, maybe after our kickoff call, now I want to share the scope of work tab with them, right? Maybe initially it was just set to internal. Now I can move it to shared with clients, right? Maybe I don't want to share certain tabs until we get to a certain phase of the project, right? Maybe you're a designer, or let's say a web designer or a brand designer, right? Maybe you're doing brand and web. Maybe you're like, hey, for the branding phase, I just want us to focus on this. I don't even want to show you the web design stuff yet, right? So you have that control over what you can show and hide to the client, and it gives you that flexibility in doing so, right? But again, I can move these throughout, really simple, really easy. I can kind of white label and customize the way this looks and feels however I see fit, communicate with the client, tag the client, tag the team here inside of this. But again, this is what works for me and for my brain, right? This is how I like to view things. This is how I like to manage my projects. And so with Kitchen, in which, you've seen also in Notion, you have that flexibility to build things the way you work, right? I think that's like really important with any tool that you're using, to not be forced into a box, right? Like I always like to say, really define the way you want to work, really define, your day-to-day processes, and then find a tool that supports that, right? Don't be confined. Don't limit yourself or limit the way you work because a tool doesn't have the features you need, right? Another kind of feature or item that I really like inside of Kitchen is kind of this folder section. Again, I can create, folders, subfolders. Again, if you're a designer, copywriter, you're uploading documents for review, mock-ups for review, whatever. Inside of this folder, I've uploaded just kind of a draft proposal document, right? Clients can come through, click here. Hey, can we adjust, this copy? Hey, can we change this picture? Hey, can we add this text here, right? So this, again, allows me to still have all of this information in a single place. Client is able to see, hey, yes, I can see my tasks. Yes, I can see my homework. Yes, I can see, my deliverables and things like that all inside of this one place. But again, this is unique to me, my business, and how I work. I recently had a bookkeeper ditch, it was Keeper, I think it's now Double, ditch Double for kitchen. The individual or, tasks that, when a bookkeeper assigns and says, hey, I have a question about this transaction. Her clients weren't using QuickBooks. They were using Xero. So she's like, Double doesn't help me at all. So I can instead create a transaction question here, send it off to them, and then they can respond, right? So again, you have kind of that flexibility in using this however you see fit. I've just happened to call mine scope of work, right? I can name this whatever I want, transaction list, task list, and then use it however I see fit. That's just a couple. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details within what you can do in kitchen. That's another video. This really is just a way for me to manage my project from start to finish, not have the client have to hop, a ton of different places to go access things, but it's simple, it's centralized, it's quick and easy to access, and everything else in between. Now, with every tool has its pros, it has its cons, no matter what. I really think for both of these tools, and Fran, I would love your thoughts too, but with both of these tools, I think one of the big benefits is that they integrate with other tools, right? So you can, use webhooks or use Zaps to still, you can still use Dubsado, you can still use Honeybook or whatever, and use Zapier to create your Notion portal or create your kitchen folder, right? So you still have that flexibility there. I think with Notion, one of the big benefits too is that it is a blank slate. I think for me, why I didn't connect with Notion is because it was a blank slate. So I don't know. For me, I think that is a con, but for some people that can be a pro too. But I would love to hear kind of your thoughts too on like how that kind of makes it a benefit of using Notion for a client portal.
Yeah, I definitely think it can be a pro or a con, depending on how you look at it. I think it can be a pro because it just gives you so much flexibility. Mm-hmm. Like with the tasks, for example, you view those in so many different ways because of the way that Notion databases work. So if you wanted to a table, if you want it to be a board view, if you want it to be a calendar, like there are a lot of options that you can really pick what works best for you and what makes the most sense for your business. But yeah, on the flip side, if you are trying to start from scratch, it can be a bit daunting because it's like, okay, I don't even know what I should be adding to this page or where I should be starting. So it's definitely a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of the same goes with kitchen, right? Like it does have very similar features or possibilities, I think, with as a notion of, being able to do more task management or true project management, but it is a, more structured tool of, hey, this is what you got, right? So you don't have as much flexibility or customization to kind of flow as your brain flows like you can in Notion. I think though with either tool, the best one is the one that you're going to use. The best one is the one that, you will consistently use with your clients, with your team, even if you're a solopreneur, right? I think a lot of people, especially on the Notion side, tend to kind of just live in Notion for other things, for notes or, whatever. That might be the best option for you to use your client portal if you're already inside of Notion. For kitchen, if you are a project-based service provider, so, designers, I even mentioned, the bookkeeper, any service pros like us, I think kitchen really works well and makes sense. Whatever you're going to use consistently, go for it. If you were digging everything you just saw today, you can grab the exact Notion template that Fran was sharing, as well as her Notion mini course with the link in the comments. You can also snag my Client HQ in a day, where I come in and completely white label and set up and integrate your client portal however you want, right? However you want your templates, the things to look and feel and flow for you and your unique client experience, all set up in a day. Now, if you're like, look, y'all, should I use Notion? Should I use Kitchen? Should I use something else? Drop a comment below and I will make sure that I respond. Until next time, happy automating.